Welcome everyone. We're going to get started. And just a note, if you do need the washroom at any time, they're down the hall and on the left. If it gets really warm in here, I'm going to call on the people in the back to open the 2 windows directly in front of me. Thank you. And welcome to the Island Lecture Series. This program has been happening with the Institute of Island Studies on and off since the late 1980s. So that's pretty exciting, and this is a wonderful turnout, so thank you all for coming out tonight. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, who have called this island home for over 12,000 years. And as a fairly recent settler myself to Epikwood, I'd like to express my respect for Mi'kmaq history, culture, and stewardship, and to elders past, present, and future. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Bren Simmers. I manage the Island Studies Press, which is the publishing arm of the Institute. And the Institute of Island Studies is a research, education, and public policy institute. We live just down the hall here, and we just celebrated 40 years, so pretty exciting. I'm excited. So if you're curious about what we do, you can look at our website, islandstudies.com. Or we also have a monthly newsletter, or monthly-ish newsletter, which is full of all things island, both local and international islands. And I'm going to pass this around. I promise I won't sell your email or spam you or anything like that. But if you feel like you want to join, you're welcome to put your name in your email. So I'll pass this around. There's a pencil here, which will probably go flying, but great. And so tonight, the Island Lecture Series presents an illustrated talk by Dr. Doug Sobey on the historical forest composition of PEI in the mid-1800s, based on the survey books of Alexander Anderson, who was a government surveyor for Prince County from the 1890s, I'll try that again. I'm still getting used to using glasses. From the 1830s to the 1870s. We'll hear about the different forest types and how the forest that Anderson encountered bears no comparison to the remnant degraded woodland of today. I always like to ask this question out of curiosity. Who here knows Dr. Doug Sobey personally? Okay, glad. Sure. Okay, and for those of you who don't know Doug, I'm going to read his bio and introduce you to him. So Doug Sobey has taught at various institutions in Northern Ireland for 30 years, including the University of Ulster. 11 of his monographs on the present and historical forests of the island have been published by the island government, along with historical papers in Island magazine. He co-authored the book Samuel Holland, His Work and Legacy on Prince Edward Island, and he contributed a chapter on the island's forest history to Time and a Place, an environmental history of Prince Edward Island. So I will now turn it over to Dr. Doug Sobey. Please welcome Doug.
Well, thank you, Bren. I hope you can all hear me in the absence of a sound system. I will shout if I have to. I thank you all for coming this evening. I know I'm in competition with lobsters tonight in the fishery, a major lecture going on in the McDougall Hall. So I'm pleased to see that there seems to be no overlap between lobsters and lumber, I guess. This is the culmination, and I think the very last of my reports. It's the 12th in I could call it a series, which I've been doing since 1993, when I came over for a 6-month sabbatical from the University of Ulster to work with the Institute of Island Studies and the forestry branch of the PEI government. At that time, looking at the forests of the modern forests as they were today from the Prince Edward Island inventory. And that resulted in, I'm just going to whiz through those, reports and papers in journals, some with my colleague William Glenn, who did a lot of the computer analysis. And later, in 1996, I came back specifically to look at the historical records. In 1992, I was looking at the modern forest and did a classification of the forest. And in 1996, I began the study of the historical records on the forests of the island. And those are some of the reports that were produced by forestry, including one on the wood used in shipbuilding, and then 11 years ago, one on all the maps in the archives that mention trees. At the end of that talk, I gave a talk here at that time, in 2014, I said I would be back in 2 years with the next report, which is the one I'm doing now. And it actually has taken 10 or 11 years. It's not that I've been working the whole time on that. I had to do other things as well, especially the book on Samuel Holland. But the survey books of Alexander Anderson are an untapped resource and the best resource of all for the forests, especially of one particular area, and that is West Prince. Now, he was the Honourable Alexander Anderson. There's a sketch for a portrait by Robert Harris. He was a member of the Legislative Council, but he was also a surveyor, and you can see him there with his surveying compass. He was born in Oysterbed Bridge in 1795, the second son of a Scottish-born loyalist soldier of the same name, Alexander Anderson, who lived to be 106, dying in 1854. That was this man's father. And when he was 2 years old, his father moved from Oysterbed Bridge to Seacow Head, and there young Alexander Anderson was brought up. And it was there that he was trained in the field of surveying, possibly by his father, who was a military soldier during the American Revolution. From the 1830s onward, he acted as, or was commissioned as, the government surveyor for all of the townships in Prince County, plus the 3 adjacent ones in Queens County. And thereafter, for the next 40 years of his life, he was constantly going up west. In a horse and cart, you can imagine 1830s, camping in the field and surveying. And the fortunate thing about his work is that all of his survey books of that period survive in the archives. I don't know why. The other surveyors for Queens County and Kings County don't survive. So it's very fortunate that we have these survey books. So let's look at, we actually have his chain as well. That is his Gunter's chain, as it's called, in the possession of a descendant. And just to note, a surveyor's chain is 66 feet long and has 100 links. It's not only a chain as a unit of measure, 66 feet, but it's also a device used for surveying. And we have his some of his drawing and mapping equipment, and one of the books that he owned on surveying, which is dated 1737, also in the possession of a descendant. Now, I'll get right into it. The island has 3 natural geographic regions. I don't know if you knew that, but these are the 3 regions, and increasingly I notice other government bodies and sometimes news using these divisions. And these are the natural divisions which I have used throughout my studies that I've mentioned, dividing the island into 3 sections, which make sort of geographical sense rather than the county boundaries, which go right through the longest parts of the island. We are going to be looking at the western region. You can see the 3 regions there, and you can see they differ very greatly in their soil drainage. And the red represents poor soil, poorly drained soil. Green is good throughout the diagrams that I'm going to be showing you. The western region of Prince Edward Island, as I defined it, the boundary line is right on the road between Traveller's Rest and Reed's Corner. That's where the Mi'kmaq Portage was. The road is just following in the portage, and a French cart, and later the Loyalists used that track, and it developed into the highway of today. And it runs between two creeks. So a portion of the western region includes Lot 19. Those are the townships that Samuel Holland numbered, and fortunately in the west they're sequential, 1 to 17. The only bit is when you go around the corner, Lot 7, 8, right to 15. So remember those, and you probably already know them, because sometimes I'll just refer to the lot, so you'll see the numbers later. Looking at it from a satellite, it is, you notice, perhaps I'll take us back on that previous one, and you notice that there is much more wet soil in the west, the green there, but in comparison with the two other areas, which have a much greater area of well-drained soil. And this has great implications for the forest. In fact, early settlers to the island, and they wrote this in the accounts, used the forest as an indicator of the quality of the soil. And you wanted to settle on the green land, the well-drained land, good soils which would yield crops when cleared. The western region, in particular, looking at the drainage, you can see that there is about a third of it is poorly drained. In fact, 53% falls within the wetter half of the drainage spectrum, and 47% in the drier. And if we look at the distribution, you can actually read where the wet soils are by from the air or from a satellite, in that the good soils, the green land, has all been cleared for agriculture. That is the land that would have borne upland hardwood forest, and it's gone. Gone from almost all of the island, except for small scattered woodlots, which are greatly degraded. The areas that bear forests are the wetlands, and we can look at this in more detail for the extreme west, and you see there's a lot of good land up west in this area here, this broad band of soils on the Gulf side of the island, which extends into O'Leary and all the way to West Point. All the bright green and the slightly darker green area is all cleared and once held upland forest. And closer where Summerside is, you can see the same pattern here, a second area of well-drained soils going from really Port Hill, a wedge going through to Abram Village, and right through to Summerside here. But there's a large area of wet soils around Cape Egmont. The settlement history of the western region, I'm just going into this because Anderson began his surveying in the west in the 1830s. In the 1830s, this was the western region's population growth in the 19th century. And you can see in 1827, only 3,000 people. In fact, it had been settled as early as 1728, when the French Acadians established themselves for about 30 years at what was called Malpeque, present-day Port Hill. But that settlement, they cleared the land. Scottish settlers took over after the deportation. So it had been some settlers for a century, but it thereafter begins to grow slowly, even by, when Anderson begins, 4,265, say in 1833, and then there's a slow or steady, sort of exponential, the first stages of an exponential growth, such that by 1881, there are 25,000 people in the area. Not very many, really, but enough to occupy all the good lands. And if we look at the 1861 census, you can see there's a great differential in the population for these 17 townships. Lot 1, Tignish, very high population, settled early by French Acadians in 1799, and shortly after by quite a number of Irish, and it has remained French-Irish since that time. At the other end, Lot 17, settled by Loyalists from 1784, but in between you can see some of them, and a factor is not only the period of settlement, but the quality of the land. Some of these are the poor land at the Portage Isthmus, where the middle section was. So Lot 10, practically all wetland and bogland, and so also Lot 12. There are Lot 11 people who, quite a population on it, but there's a lot of poor land in that particular area. If we plot, as I have, there is an important map of the island, published 1863, but the data was collected in 1861, which happens to coincide with the census year as well. We have this map by D.J. Lake, which is a single map. They used to have it in the library at UPEI at the front of an original copy of the map. And it shows every individual farmstead with the name of the owner on it. And I've plotted those on this map, well, on the digital map, the computer map of the island. So when you get a copy this size, the houses all merge together. But we can spread them out a little bit. I could spread them out right so that you're looking at just one area, but I'm not going to do that. And in the western area of the island, you can see that there's still a lot of empty land, even where there is good soils, especially in this section, the Western Road. The Yoleri Road is there, and there are no settlers along it. And Lot 6, and I think, I haven't checked the reason why, has no settlers at all, and it probably has to do with ownership. Whoever owned the township. The island was granted to large proprietors. Some of these were locally living. They had bought them, but some were resident in the United Kingdom, and sometimes they didn't develop their land. Lot 6 was a late developer, and so also part of Lot 4. And if we go to the east, you can see that's the distribution of settlers in 1861. Largely, more or less filled in. Most of the land's been taken up, the good land, and of course many more people would come after that, filling in the gaps and also establishing towns. If we consider the various census and the amount of cleared land, now we have census statistics which show, and those are the census years, and it shows, and one of the forms of the census, the person was asked how much arable or improved land have you on the farm, and so these census results survive, and you can compile them. And you will notice that each year the amount of arable as a percentage of the total land, and arable, and I've calculated this amount, this isn't in the census, arable is a percentage of the area with drier soil drainage classes, it keeps going up. So these are the values just in some senses. So 4% of the land is occupied in 1833, that's the land area, by arable land, by farmland, cleared farmland. By 1861, 18%, and by 1891, 42%. But you can see that by 1891, almost 90% of the good farmland is filled up. So by the end of the 19th century, up west, or western Prince County, has more or less all of the good farmland has been occupied. And those are the values for the percentages of good soil occupied in those years. Now Anderson is surveying between, in this period here, and many areas had, by the 1860s as you saw, the coastal areas were all occupied. And so very few of his forest descriptions relate to the coast, because it had already been, the forest had been cleared. But the interior of the island, the Western Roads section, and I'll mention some of the roads that he surveyed, they were through virgin forests. And much of his work, and most of his work, I speculate, and looking at his work, I've become very familiar with it. It was untouched forest. taking us up to 1935, the first time that we had a complete picture of forest cover from the first aerial photographic survey of the island. You can see this is all the forest that was remaining on the island. All of the good land has been cleared, all that green coloured land we looked at earlier. And just to update you to 1990, which is now 30 years ago, but that was my baseline was 1990 when I started the work. Forest has begun to come back, and this is true of the whole island. It's true of eastern Canada, it's true of New England, as probably most of North America, as good farmland, as people abandon farms, marginal farms are abandoned, and the woodland comes back. Previous studies of the pre-settlement forests of the western region. Well, I have to say that I've got to blow my own horn here because I'm the only person who's looked at the previous history of the forests of the island, I think, in any great detail. And these are two of the early, 20 years ago, early descriptions of the French records and then the British period records covering the next 2 centuries. And I'm just going to just show you one aspect of my discovery. These are early descriptions of hardwood forests, upland hardwood forests, that I found in the written records, historical descriptions. And they vary in age, a date from the French period 1750 up to late 19th century. And they refer to specific areas. And especially valuable, especially concentrated in the area around Malpeque Bay, especially Fort Hill, Lot 13 area, and a number around the Cascampec Bay. And if we look at the trees of hardwood forest, I'll explain. There are 3 trees that are important in hardwood forests. These are the broadleaf trees. And beech is one, and those are accounts all reporting beech. Maple is another, and those are reporting maple. And then the maple is usually sugar maple, by the way. And the other third climax species is yellow birch. And so those are of the upland forests, the upland hardwood forests, the 3 principal trees. Those are the what we can get out of the early descriptive accounts. And if we I'm a great tallier of this data. When you lack data, you tally numbers. So maple 15, and this is from the historical accounts. Beech gets a score of 12, and yellow birch gets a score of 12. So they look about equal. However, oh yes, the whole island. These are the values for the whole island. Differ in that beech tends to lead. 62, 55, 46, and also the comments of the early commentators on the forest stress the importance of beech, really stress it, from John Stewart right through, even before John Stewart, who was commemorated just a few days ago with a plaque by the Canadian Mapping Board. So beech is certainly turning up in the accounts for the whole island. However, when you let's look at the maps. This is mapping. When I looked at all of the manuscript maps in the archives, these are paper maps, handwritten maps, drawn by surveyors, often describing the forest along survey lines. And I extracted all of the records, and these are the records, the areas that were for the western region for which there were maps. These are not these are the plotting of the descriptions of the forest. They're mostly in this part of the western region and a few in the far west. And when we look at the descriptions, these are the 3 hardwoods, the climax hardwoods, on early maps. And let's tally up the 3 species then. Beech, occurring, and you'll notice they're occurring in different areas now. They're not along the coast. Some of the maps are inland. Birch and sugar maple. And now when we tally the results, Beech has taken over the lead as we get more accurate results and begins to agree with the rest of the island. And maple scoring 14 and birch 12. And birch is the only hardwood tree named in 6 labels, the only tree named in 6 labels, and leads in 15 other. It's really taking over the lead. Birch leads in 3, never named on its own, and maple doesn't lead in any. So, this is where we stand before I began to look at Anderson's books. Set that aside, we'll come to that later. That's just looking at past history. My study of Anderson's field books, the method of data extraction and analysis, I examined all 55, I or my partner, examined all 55 of Anderson's survey field books in the public archives and copied by hand their forest-related records. This was in 1996, before cameras and policies would allow quick copying. So you had to literally go through every book, and you had to, and these are the books of Anderson, at least the covers, and you had to transcribe. You couldn't take a photograph of it in those days, and you could get a photocopy, but that would have been exorbitant, because these little books, you'd be copying every page. These are the books that Alexander Anderson, a leather cover on the one on the right there, paper cover. He made the books himself, he bound them together, they had good quality paper. This is the book for roads, the survey for roads. Here is his own writing in roads, and fortunately he's a very neat writer, and anyone can read that as long as you can read cursive, which wasn't a problem for anyone in my day. I guess it is nowadays for some people. If we transcribe that, I just want to take a little time to look at Friday the 20th of July, 1838, and how he's measuring it. So, 80 chains in a mile, by the way. These are old measures, so just to catch you up with it. So at 7, this is what he's written, at 7-60-0, that means at 7 miles, 60 chains, 0 links, a mixture of beech, birch, maple, fir, hemlock, and a few pine, 2, the next measure, 8 miles, or 800, then hemlock, fir, birch, and a few beech. It is dry at present, but in the spring and autumn it might be wet. And then at 12 chains further on, 12 chains, 50 links, that's a half a chain, dry. Land wooded with beech, maple, birch, and some fir too, 8-50, then closely set with small spruce, and in some places nothing but small spruce bushes. If only he had kept up this level of detail on his descriptions of the forest throughout his career. Later on, this is the 1830s, 1838, he would write fine hardwood. So the records sort of, well, he wasn't there as an ecologist. He wasn't interested in our interests 150 years later. He was there to simply record the quality of the land and also to run a line for a road. Here is another example from the field book for lot number 8, that's West Point, and it's for a particular farm. I just transcribed it there. Monday, 13th of July, 1865, John Hickey and Donald McPherson. That means the line between those two farms continued north variant. That means the line north on the variant of Samuel Holland's measure, which all lines of the island followed, from the 40 chain. Mixed growth as before, that would be the previous, with a great deal of whitewood. We'll leave whitewood for the moment, but that is the great mystery of Anderson's books. Then at 42, dry, fir, birch, maple, and a few hemlock and spruce. And the other page reads, just the point of, and this is quite important in my placing these on the map, brook. B always stands for brook. 49 chains, 48 links, west branch of Pierre Jacques River. He's probably never seen it spelt, and that's a good phonetic, Pierre Jacques River, which is still there, spelt Pierre Jacques in French. Pierre Jacques, 4972, so it exactly cross ditto runs to east. Pierre Jacques 4972, cross ditto runs to east 52. Oh yes, you've got the difference between 48 and 72 is the exact width of the river there. And then he comes across a road, and from the river soft, some cedar. Soft is this word for the ground is wet, and soft underneath wet. 56 chains, some poles cut. That must refer to, he's come across cedar where poles have been cut, cedar poles. And then he reaches Hamilton Road, small spruce and Indian tea. Well, we still call it Labrador tea, or it used to be Ladum Groenlandicum. I think the Latin name has changed. And then that's at 62 chains, 25 links. And then 73 chains, hardwood, and then 2 chains further, it's fine hardwood. Then later he marks a fir tree, and comes across a dead fir stump. So all of this information of this sort needed to be transcribed by hand, but also the interconnecting information in order to be able to place it on a map. You couldn't just record the tree. I wanted to put these on the map. So I examined them. I entered the forest data into a Microsoft Works database. This is the database for the O'Leary Road. And you can see the various titles at the top for location, description, the trees, the archival source, the date, comments, and its mapping. And this is the first tree on the O'Leary Road, and this is the start of his survey. First tree record is at 2 miles 52 chains, namely he didn't encounter any wood within 2.6 miles from the shore. And he later counted and begins continuous forest 3 miles from the shore, 3 miles 51 chains, 30 links. Links is 6 inches about, or 8 inches I think. So it's a very accurate measure of where things are changing. And this is lot 8, this is the John Hickey and Donald McPherson lot, and you can see the entry for that. Now, using the computer mapping program MapInfo, I located and mapped the forest descriptions and trees recorded in his field book. That's very easily said, but it took about 10 years. Not continuously, but I was very persistent. I was sort of dogged at if I couldn't, many were for farms. Easy enough to know where the O'Leary Road is, or the lot line for boundary line of lot 1 or 2. But when you've got John Hickey and Angus McPherson in 1865, and you find Meacham no longer records them as, there may be a McPherson, but the names have changed, and so there's a lot of individual persistent research there. Some of them stumped me, but most of them I managed. I managed to map 2,732 of Anderson's stand descriptions and trees, individual trees that he recorded, on the GIS, the Geographic Information System computer for the island, either as geometric points for trees, where you recorded trees on the program, you record them as a point, a geometric point, or as geometric areas, and they're called polygons, for a stand description. And this is just an example along the southern boundary line of lot 3 to show you what he ran a line, that's the southern boundary line of lot 13, which is Port Hill area going inland. This would be somewhere around Wellington, or perhaps north of it, Richmond or somewhere. That's the line. And he later, in February 1859, he came across to survey further, laying off lines for farms at various, and August 1859, and also in February 1875. Now, what I did was to plot on the line. He would have run the line, but you see the square areas around the line are the polygons that I've created. There is a chained line polygon. It's a polygon running along the chained line, and each chain line polygon is 4 chains wide. That was my decision. You know, the man is running straight line through forest. How far can he see the forest? And on the advice of Bill Glenn, who's a forester, I accepted that probably 2 chains on either side, 66 feet, 280 meters, 40 meters on either side is about as far as you can see into the forest in judging the forest that you're in. But of course, forests can change within a short distance. But both he and I were, I'm just simply trying to make what is a complex situation with forests something simple that you can map. So, but sometimes there were non-chained line polygons, which I plotted. These are my plottings. They were when he said hardwood to the south. And let's look at the actual, what he described these forests as. So, hardwood to south. So he was recording fir, maple, and whitewood or spruce, but he says there's hardwood to the south. So I recorded with a round, non-chained line description there. And this took some time to do, although MapInfo is designed to do this, and I won't go into the means that you do it. You can easily create the polygons once you decide on the measures. And so you have these different changes in forests. So as he's running the line, there's hardwood, which starts beyond the diagram and stops at that point. And there's some hemlock he recorded at a particular point. And then there's hardwood farther, and so on. Then for each stand and tree, I extracted data already on the GIS map from 2 other databases. Fortunately, I don't just have Anderson's data. There's data available from other sources as well, and very important data. And one is the soil survey of Prince Edward Island, published 1988, which the 1 to 10,000 scale map, which is on the computer. It's not the common one you see in the booklet. It's much finer. Gives the percentage cover, or divides the island, rather, into 6 drainage classes, as well as soil series, but it's the drainage classes, and they are the ones that we looked at before, and I'll refer to again. And so the drainage properties of the polygons containing each tree or forest type as plotted on the GIS map were assessed using the digitized form of the 1988 PEI soil survey. And here you see, for Lot 8, West Point, Lot 8, you see the drainage classes, and here you see my polygons plotted as a layer over them, here, without any information on them. But those are all the polygons for Lot 8. Those are forest lines that Anderson ran in Lot 8. This is a road line here, across here, the liney road, and then all these farms coming off. And you can see, if we go in on that particular area, you can see in more detail, and it's quite easy for some. That's obviously 100% well drained, coarse, well drained, whereas others you have to work out areas and what proportion of the polygon is occupied by. It's just colors and squares and colors, and working out areas of color and square, and it took some time to do that as well, for 2,000 of these. But there was also the percent cover, forest cover in 1935, which I showed you, and in 1990, and this could also be assessed, whether those squares were covered by forest in 1935 or in 1990, and also the types of forest in 1990. based on my classification of the forests, the present-day forests. I entered all of this data then into an Excel file for analysis. This is just a sample of the file. The lower layer continues up across on the top, but I put them on 2 levels so that you can see them, and just enlarge it a bit. Here you can see the code for each tree, and the descriptive and so forth, the information including the polygon, whether it's an area or a point, which is a tree, and its area, which the computer will give you that if you click it, and the level of confidence that I had in the measure. These were subjective, whether high, medium, or low confidence. And then this continues the table across, dividing into forested 90, forested 30, and so on. So I have a lot of information on every polygon from not just Anderson, but from the other 2 databases I mentioned. So the results, this was the results of that mapping in terms of just numerical results. The individual trees, I extracted 401, of which I was able to map 390. Stand descriptions along chained lines, as you see, 2,241, almost all of them mapped, and then not along chained lines, 134, to give those totals that you see, and 98.4%. So if I got that in a class assessment, I'd be very pleased. So, compared with the forest descriptions in the written historical accounts, Anderson's description have a special value. They give us a picture of the forest at a precise spot at a precise time. The value of each description depending upon what he recorded. And compared with the forest descriptions written on as labels on contemporary manuscript plans, they have 4 advantages. There are many more of them. About 10 times as many compared with the maps for the Western region. They often provide continuous unbroken descriptions of the forest over long distances. They contain much more descriptive detail than do the labels on the plans. The labels on the plans are very brief and hardwood, softwood, or not much more than that. And because of the nature of Anderson's records, they can be much more precisely plotted on a modern digital map than can the labels on the plans. And also, if you wish, visited. If the forest is still there, if it's still forested, you could see what that forest is today. So these are all of the plottings of those 2,700 records, and you can see their distribution over the whole of the Western region. It varies from township to township, as I'll show you in a moment, but that's an enlargement of the area in the west. And the individual trees are marked by these small diamond shapes, and these transects consist of quite a number of polygons or forest descriptions along a survey line. Here is the O'Leary Road, here, right there, and here is the Western Road. He was responsible for surveying through forest a line that would eventually become the Western Road. And here are the long lines, just the longer lines that he surveyed, and these were quite easy to plot largely. They're lot lines or township lines, and roads that he ran, including the 20-kilometer length of the Western Road from Mill River to Tignish. And you can see that there's considerable variation in the number of records per township. The total for each township is shown on the left axis, and then because the townships are not of equal size, they vary from one is 72 kilometers, the largest is 106. I recalculated them per kilometer square on the right axis here. So these are more comparable, the light blue, but it's the blue that pertain to the actual townships. And you can see that the range for the the dark blue values, the number per township. Lot 10 had only 25 forest descriptions. It had lots of forest, but he did not survey there. It was so bad, bog forest and such, that no one was commissioning him to survey there. Whereas Lot 11, right next door, is the largest, and it also has quite a bit of bog forest, but also quite a few settlers. So you can see the variation. Lot 17, Summerside and St. Elmoner's, Muscush, simply because it had all been surveyed before his career. This is the 1830s onward. That was, Summerside wasn't established, but the area was well settled by that time. And the time span of Anderson's forest records, these are his records for the different 5-year periods. And that's the time span of his records. The range is 43 years from 21st November 1832, the first record for a forest record, to 22nd of September 1875. He had reached the age of 79 then. So he spent all of his life basically in the surveying in West Prince, and you can locate him every particular day at a precise spot almost, even to the time of day. Very few careers are so well documented. The median record is on 15th September 1853. That's the middle record of the whole bunch. Now, he usually named trees, one or more trees, but usually only to the genus level. That's maple, not red maple or sugar maple. That's birch, not yellow birch or white birch. Sorry, I'll go back there. Or often he used the terms there, hardwood, softwood, and mixed growth, terms still used by foresters as a quick generic or quick summary of the general summary of the forest. For the general forest types, and for each of the tree taxa, computer maps were constructed showing their distribution in the western region. I've talked about how I've mapped those. And just to show you just the general distribution, and these are maps that you can zoom in, on the computer. You can go right down to meters on the ground, or you can come out and get the whole county. And these are symbols representing the points. They're not the actual polygons. And so those are the distribution of hardwood and mixed growth across the whole western region. Looks pretty similar, but in fact could be very different at the local level. And if you look at hardwood and softwood, 188 stands only of softwood because he often recorded the softwoods to the particular species, like spruce or cedar or tamarack. Well, he used the word juniper, but softwood was less used. The tree taxa that he named, as I said, most were to the genus, are these 5 broadleaves, all common on the island, all common in the early records and on the maps: beech, maple, birch, ash, and whitewood. The conifer, about 6 conifers. Whitewood is a mystery. I'll not pause on it at the moment. Pine, hemlock, fir, cedar, tamarack, spruce. Apart from whitewood, no surprise. These are all the chief trees of the island. A number of them have only one species in the genus. So this makes it very easy to identify. Beech is always American beech or North American beech, Fagus grandifolia, and hemlock is eastern hemlock, fir is balsam fir, cedar is white cedar, tamarack is tamarack. And, but a number of others have 2 species or 3, and so there's a bit of a question, which is it likely to be? We can work out, and we have the mysterious whitewood, we can work out that it is more likely in old forest to be sugar maple than red, although red can also be important, more likely to be yellow than white birch, and black or white ash could be either, but in Prince County it's more likely to be black ash, and then white, red, and jack pine, almost certainly all white pine, and
the spruces, we can disregard the white, which is so ubiquitous today. It would have been important in coastal areas, but black, whether it's black or red, is a real problem. When we compare the numbers for each species, recorded by Anderson, we get this result, and I'll subdivide that into the two, the broadleaf trees for the western region, and the three leading ones are the ones we would expect. The prominent beech maple birch of the northern hardwoods. And by the way, the island isn't unique, sitting in a sort of silver sea. This is true of the Acadian forest region and the Great Lakes, St. Lawrence forest region, and the northern hardwoods of the US. These are the three principal northern hardwood trees that occupy the hardwood forest. Ash, important, and whitewood, as you can see, but the others are minor. Oak, of no significance whatever, we'll talk about it briefly later. The others not turning up much in his records either. The conifers, spruce by far outstrips all species, and you see 781, followed by fir, and then cedar and hemlock, and finally tamarack and yew is not a tree, but he recorded it occasionally. I'm sure you saw it. It's a shrub, a forest shrub, which he occasionally recorded. So my method of vegetation analysis for each of the 11 major tree genera, all of its stand descriptions and tree records were brought together into a tree box and then analyzed as a data set. So all of the descriptions of beech were put in a box, in effect, brought together and analyzed. And I'll tell you about how I analyzed them in a moment. And then the stand descriptions were sorted into subgroups representing likely forest types, using only the information contained in Anderson's verbal descriptions, particularly the trees he listed and any general forest type he named, like hardwood, softwood, as well as his comments on the quality of the trees, whether he says good beech or large beech, on the topography of the site or on the properties of the soil. Now he didn't often, he did not infrequently record soil as soft or dry or good, but not regularly, but there are quite a few comments on that. And the subgroups identified were based on my knowledge of the forest types likely to occur from my own studies of the island's forests, present and past, and on the scientific literature elsewhere, such as the Nova Scotia Forest Ecosystem Classification, which is extremely useful. So let's just look at the method for beech. I'm not going to go through all the trees, we'll be here all night. Beech was the dominant tree, hardwood tree on the island. This is the 146 polygons, as if we zoomed way up and are looking down on them, 146 polygons and 42 points, or individual trees, and then they're transformed into these, this is just for representation, these diamonds representing each one of those. This is where beech was dominant, and I'll show you his description in a moment. These are areas where he says beech, nearly all beech, or practically all beech, especially in the western part of the western region. And you can see them more closely there. Long stretches along the western road is predominantly beech along these sections, or the O'Leary Road here. And this is the beech box. These are all the descriptions. I decided that I would reproduce all of the information reproduce in the report, all of the information, so that anyone else can reassess my data. If they disagree, they can say, oh, you've misclassified one description there, it should go in another slot. There are 48 trees of beech that he recorded. There are 146 forest descriptions, and there were a lot of beech as a minority component in some stands, 84. And let's look at some of these. These are the classifications that beech as dominant, beech with other tolerant hardwoods, namely maple and birch, and beech with conifers, and so on. So let's look at, these are the descriptions, his actual words. So, 7 times he used exactly this phrase, hardwood, chiefly beech. In these 7, these are the numbers of the individual stands. And by the way, the 3 means lot 3, lot 5, and so on. So you can instantly see what township he's done that. Hardwood, chiefly beech and dry, lot 13, fine hardwood. So you have there all sorts of, those are just examples, and no one would disagree with me that beech must be dominant in those stands. Greater part beech, mostly beech, nearly all beech, chiefly beech, and so on. And continuing, but with other named species present, hardwood with some fir, mostly beech. Hardwood, chiefly beech with a few maple, and so on. And here's one, beech with other tolerant hardwoods. Now this is a different forest group because we've got birch and maple mixed in with them. And you can see all 3 species are occurring together. You've got, and the last one, beech and maple, and so on. So that's a different group. Beech with other tolerant hardwoods, and below that is beech with conifers. And I can then go to the forest ecosystem classification for Nova Scotia, and it's quite easy to find there beech as a dominant. It says, I think it says rare in Prince Edward Island, and we have only one example of this beech habitat on Prince Edward Island today, which was once so prominent in the west and elsewhere in the island, and that's in Strathdartney Park. The trees aren't very large because of beech canker. It almost suffered the loss through the Plan A of the highway was going to go through or beside that area about 10 years ago. I wrote a letter to the Guardian. It was one of the most effectual letters I've ever written, which led to a protest, which led to Plan B being the new road. What else you can get from the records is what is the principal trees occurring with beech in the 146 stands. Those are the ones, the 20% of the trees are those which are only beech, basically, and the others then fir, maple, hemlock, and birch. Now the maple is likely to be absolutely certain it would be sugar maple, and the birch is yellow birch, there's no question. Hemlock is hemlock. And then once you begin to group these, you can convert that written data into quantitative data by carrying out, comparing or grouping all of the polygons of each type, and then working out the mean percent cover of the drainage class. And so you can see differences between the different groups that I've created. Beech and upland hardwood with birch and maple, only 8 samples of that, but the mean cover of the drier classes is almost 80%. And beech dominant and so on. So you can begin to look at these soil properties that are on the site today where those trees were. Hemlock, hemlock is a tree, I can show you it today, or rather as Anderson saw it in his day. That's just the points of location. I'm afraid there's no hemlock in West Prince anymore. There's one single stand of hemlock. It is an old-growth forest tree, lives to be of great age, and it's totally gone from the forests of the West. And so with hemlock, you can also group the forests, group the descriptions rather. There were 44 trees, I think, if I'm reading it rightly, and these are various forest types that I was able, hemlock in conifer forest, hemlock forest itself, hemlock spruce forest, hemlock in hardwood forest, and hemlock in mixed forest. Here's the hemlock forest, a fine grove, lot 8. Hemlock grove, or a good deal of hemlock, lot 9, 977. Hemlock grove, lot 3. 2 descriptions of a fine grove of hemlock. That was a term that they used. It just means there's only hemlock there, in a grove, almost. And you can see those in the diagram there. Then hemlock in hardwood forest. You can see 40 stands, hemlock in hardwood, fir, hardwood, hemlock, and pine, and so on the list. And hemlock spruce forest. Here you've got a combination hemlock and spruce. Two examples, hemlock and large spruce. So these are the actual wordings of, and variations in the wording. Fine hemlock spruce. And again, I can go to the Nova Scotia classification, and we can look at hemlock spruce, red spruce, hemlock, wild lily of the valley, spruce hemlock type 3, and it records uncommon on Prince Edward Island, once very common, obviously in Prince County, totally absent now. And here you can see a hemlock grove of sorts at Orwell last year, well, at least what had survived from after the ravages of the storm Fiona. And for hemlock, you can also look at the species that are associated, and you can see its chief associate is spruce. Those are the hemlock groves. Then you can see the 3 fir as well, and also the 3 trees of the upland hardwood forest, of which hemlock is an upland forest tree. And the bar represents the 21 stands, where hemlock was the sole tree. And again, those are the drainage classes of the different hemlock groups. I've organized them I've arranged them in that linear fashion so that they're easier to read, and they make ecological sense as well. I just want the shade-tolerant climax hardwood trees of old-growth hardwood forests. That's what I was looking at earlier from the plans and from the early descriptions. And let's see how Anderson's records turn out. The relative importance of the 3 shade-tolerant hardwood trees in the upland hardwood, upland mixed forests of the western region. Now, this is upland hardwood forest in Prince Edward Island, Rose Valley. I took the picture in 2010. It looks pristine. In fact, there's probably some fields in between, but it's one of the few areas where you can get a view of continuous hardwood forest. And those are the 3 principal trees that occur. Those are the 3 associated conifers that occur, sometimes scattered among them, sometimes in perhaps valleys or depressions. Red spruce, white pine, and hemlock associated with these. And these are the trees. This is a beech tree in William Glenn's woodlot in Bonshaw. Very a good example of a beech, but it could grow much larger than that in Anderson's time. And these are the beech records which we've looked at before. Sugar maple in the Townsend woodlot, and then that's the distribution of maple, which will include sugar maple, but also red maple. And then there is yellow birch in the Townshend woodlot, and it varies. That's a young yellow birch tree, looks like birch, but by the time it gets larger, people were calling it black birch during the colonial period and thought it was a different species. And those are the birch records there. Upland hardwood, there were 130 stands in which at least one of the 3 tolerant hardwood trees is named. So these are the stands in which trees are actually named. And these were the order in Anderson's records. 83 times beech was named, maple 47, and birch 40. Just the other trees that occurred, ash, whitewood, elm, and hazel, small numbers among these 130 stands. The upland conifers, fir, 47, a few or some in 16, spruce in 16, it would be red spruce, hemlock in 13, pine in 3, all a few. And in mixed upland woodland, there were 64 stands in my mixed upland mixed woodland, in which at least one of the 3 tolerant hardwood trees were named, and they were always either maple or birch. And the other broadleaf trees were the same, a poplar in one, I think it was, you noted disturbance there, and hazel, and then the upland conifers, balsam fir, red spruce, which would be red spruce, hemlock, and yew. These are the 130 stands with named trees, named hardwood trees. And those are the distributions of the various types, although there aren't enough to really show much of a pattern. And going back to that diagram, what I can add from Anderson's work is that balsam fir is actually a component of upland hardwood forests, and especially with beech in his records. So henceforth, I will revise that diagram to include 4 species of conifer as being part of the upland forest. So if we look at his records in terms of the species, the 130 upland hardwood stands, those are 84 naming beech and the others you see there. Where the tree is a major tree, 64 naming beech, and where it is dominant, 54, and 13 for maple, none for yellow birch. So beech is leading all the way in Anderson's records. And also, the mean area of the 44 polygons in which beech was dominant, which was 5.4 hectares, that's the size of the polygon I've created on the map, was twice the area of the other 85 hardwood polygons. So not only is beech more prevalent, its polygons are much bigger, much longer stretches of his survey line. And if we add, however, the upland mixed stands, then maple and birch then come into greater prominence. This is adding them in, all together. And so when you add in the upland mixed stands that I classed, then maple and birch become more important in that combination. But in the upland hardwood, beech is the leading tree. And this compares Anderson's records with the surveyor's plans, with the whole island, the surveyor's plans, and the surveyor's plans for the western region, and they exactly, those ratios work out to be almost identical. His records correspond with the surveyor's plans, both for the whole island and the western region, those ratios for the presence of those trees. And if we remember the historical descriptions where this was what we were getting simply from descriptions, where they were all more or less equal. We remember the diagram I put on of the plans or maps, and there the beech was leading considerably, and now we've just seen that with Anderson's data, it's confirmed as well. The other broadleaf trees, just briefly mapping Anderson's stand descriptions in individual trees. We have ash. I'm not going to say anything about ash. I could also talk about ash in more detail. Whitewood, 141 stands. Perhaps it is a poplar, either large tooth aspen or balsam poplar. I don't know what it is. It could well be. It certainly has an association with brooks. The little black dots show the points, location of its polygons, and there were no trees of whitewood. He only recorded as a stand component, and it does turn out to be significantly associated with brooks. These red columns for the trees, this is all of his records, the yellow stand. All of those are much higher, and they are ash, whitewood, pine, cedar, and the mixed growth all seem to have a greater association with brooks. 2 species, hardwood, his hardwood category, and beech, show a negative association with brooks. That's a statistical test. Poplar. Poplar is very common on the island today. Trembling aspen, Populus tremuloides. He had only 8 trees and 10 stands, and if you see them plotted on the map, they are all sort of coastal and or boreal type poor forests, not of any great significance in the forest at all. And these are the descriptions of poplar, and they're all mostly associated with burn, land, burn, So a tree that is very common on the island today was of little significance. And oak, which is often paraded as, our forests were made of oak, he only found 4 trees and 1 stump. So it was of no importance in the forest, but there are other records of oak being harvested. It was viewed as the sort of the premium tree because of its association with English oak, and, but it was of little value in shipbuilding. So oak of no importance in any part of the island, in fact. The conifer trees, pine, interestingly, now he's recording, when he begins his career surveying in the 1830s, most of the pine had already been harvested, and we know that from the shipping records of the island, but yet he records it. He records, and you'll note, 60 trees, and he found it in 26 stands, but of those 60 trees, 30 were standing trees, the other half were stumps, or logs, or cut trees. So he was doing, he was recording really as an historical relic. Pine, white pine, had mostly been, certainly but from the coastal areas, had been completely removed. And thus, this is an interesting record. But pine also is associated with river valleys, as you can see. These are great valley depressions. The western part of the island, I should have mentioned at the start, is largely flat and of low elevation, unlike the central part. And so, but you do have the small valleys, and there's where pine, and pine also, as I pointed out earlier, has an association when you do a statistical test with brooks. And the pine chronology, that is when he actually recorded his pine, is mostly in the beginning of his career. There's the, that's just the sloping line that I put in, but you can see that it's in the early period. This is the period of all of, the blue is the period of all of Anderson's records, and you can see it differs in terms of the chi-square test. And the median date for the 86 pine records is November 1849. Thus, half of Anderson's pine records were recorded in the first 18 years of his 44 years of surveying. And in the 5 years between 1836 and 40, he recorded pine 25 times, significantly more than the 12 times expected from the time span of all his records. Fir is... we've already talked about it as a component of the upland hardwood forest. It was the second most common tree, 381 records, and this is just some comment on its role in hardwood forests, as we've already seen. It was an important, probably an understory tree, and one whose significance hasn't been recorded in the historical records. It also, in those, occurred on well-to-do soils. Cedar, I'm not going to say much about cedar, I could as well, but those are his cedar records. If we put them against the modern distribution of cedar in 1990, the green spots here, you can see he's finding cedar where it is today, but not exactly in the same spot, and many areas, especially in Lot 11, is totally gone from the areas. And tamarack, this is a mystery to me. Only 48 records for juniper, or tamarack, 9 trees and 39 stands. I was expecting much more, and the reason I was is that from previous work and from known history on the island, juniper ships were built of between 1833 and 1882, but you can see in the period, the 1850s, 1860s, many ships were being built, and they were being built especially in the western region, which is, again, from an earlier report I did. These 51% between those 2 years, 1856 to 1880, when you examine the Lloyd's Register inspection reports, are from the western region. Where are they getting the tamarack? Anderson isn't coming across it. And so also, here's another record showing tamarack in the west. That is juniper knees, where they were being shipped out in the 1850s to the United States. And tamarack today is an early successional tree and is very common in the west. this is the 1990 forest inventory. The spruce records, the most abundant of all. I'm not going to say much about spruce tonight. 781 records, 60 trees, and 721 stands. I was able to separate them into red and black spruce partly by the association with the 1990 distribution of black spruce. So 244 of his spruce stands I consider to be black spruce, and 24 plus 24 from his descriptions. And red spruce, also I was able to identify some of this spruce as red spruce. It's a different distribution from the black spruce, and those, so I can separate them out. And large spruce I was interested in because Anderson, because of shipbuilding again, that's the distribution of large spruce, which would have been available for shipbuilding, and that's spruce ships also in the especially the 1860s and 70s, ships began to be built out of spruce. In the end, I recognized, I was able to extract from all these analyses 18 recognized forest types from Anderson's stand descriptions. You can see 9 of them were upland forest types. Upland hardwood forest in general, but also beech forest, maple forest, upland mixed forest, hemlock spruce forest, red spruce forest, fir-dominated forest, and red spruce balsam fir forest. None of these showed up in the present-day forest analysis of the 1990 inventory. Well, I'd say none. Many of them didn't. Upland hardwood forest did, but greatly degenerated. And the lowland forest, lowland mixed forest, cedar forest, black spruce, balsam fir, black spruce tamarack forest, not very many, only 4 samples, ash forest, 22, alder woods, and barrens. Just some other incidental records that were very useful from Anderson's field book, records of timber harvesting. And he recorded always, if he came across tree cutting in the woods, timber roads, roads through the woods that were used to extract timber in the wooded areas that he was working in. And these were not settled areas at all. Timber camps, lumber camps we call them nowadays, he called them timber camps. Cut, felled, or logged trees, tree stumps especially, plus 10 boxes there showing timber harvesting activities, permit areas that were being, James Yo's name appears in a number of those records he was doing work for. He was the sort of timber baron of West Prince County. Burned woods as well. These are areas, and I will not have collected them all because only if they were in relation to forest descriptions that I was interested in. But you can see patterns, and I've related those to actual other data connected with far descriptions, but you see they're clustered, and they're not general throughout the area. Finally, I'm just going to mention studies of specific localities. I finally decided, well, you know, I can look at the trees, but I should also look at specific localities, and I selected these particular areas. They were 9 different areas that I looked at the sort of the forest in these areas. Chose these areas to get a variety of types, but especially because there was a concentration of data for these regions. And one was the O'Leary Road survey of July 1838. There is the O'Leary Road. It's almost fully free of trees today. You can see it there. That's the western road. It goes right to the shore. There is it enlarged. That's the town of O'Leary. And you can see the line of the road. And this is the line that he created that road. It was named after a man called, was it Thomas O'Leary? And it's pronounced O'Leary, which is the correct Irish pronunciation, not O'Leary, as sometimes the CBC newcomers to the province call it. It's O'Leary according to the traditional Irish pronunciation. And they got the name O'Leary Road. Once he ran the line, the road then became established. if we look at the soil map for the same road, we can see that wherever it's red here, there's still trees, basically. You'll notice here the red, the cleared land is the green in between. And so you can look at that, you can, this is enlarging, and I'll go in even, that's the western end, that was the eastern and western end, and I'm just going to zoom into so the details, this is where he started recording. These are my polygons that I've created. The first, the first is hemlock, spruce, hemlock, and a few pine. And then he's running into where the soils are poor, as measured by the soil survey of 1988. Very small spruce bushes, small spruce, almost fencing size, and it's still uncleared to this day. And then when you get to the green, that'll be 19, we can see it in the next. Hardwood, chiefly beech, and it stretches for a few sugar maple. What he said was, he called them a few bird-eyed maple was the term he used. Hardwood, chiefly beech, a few bird-eyed maple, and that whole stretch, stretching for over, I think it's over 2 miles, is, we have a description of the forest. And then as we get a few changes here, it's still hardwood forest, beech, birch, maple, fir, hemlock, a few pine, and so on. But when it gets to what is now the town of O'Leary, which is right here, it's built on a rather poor land. We're getting into the small spruce, so you can relate the soil. You can relate these changes very often very closely to the changes in drainage. And this is the final stretch of the road here. There's the Western Road. And the other thing is where you get valleys and depressions in the roads along here, you get slight changes in the forest, and an association with either upland mixedwood forest or upland conifer forest in those areas. And then the Western Road series, study, he went on to survey the Western Road. That was 20 kilometers all the way to Tignish immediately afterwards in July and August 1838. And this is the line that he surveyed. Took him a few weeks through woodland, totally untouched by any habitation or fire. And I don't think of any forest activity. This is a closer view of it from a satellite view. This is the view from using the colors. We're down at this is the Mill River. We're down at the lower end, and we can then take it in closer, and you can see the various, chiefly beech, some fir. These are my abbreviations, as briefly as I could to get them onto a map there. And as we go further up, you can see the changes occurring, and I'll not label that, but we'll look at the overall results of the drainage analysis of 4 upland local areas. Now these aren't means or out of for different polygons. This is total percent cover of the drainage class for those types of forest. This includes the O'Leary Road and the Western Road, and a line below the O'Leary Road and the Mill River area. And upland hardwood, you can see that the drainage to drier classes, 90% is on dry upland soils. What is I've classed as upland hardwood. Upland mixed wood, it drops, and then upland conifer a little bit, and then lowland forest, which would be spruce barrens and such. So it's you can read, you can predict what the forest was from the soils to a degree. And finally, the lot 13 and 14 border area, which he also surveyed a large number. Unfortunately, that's the lot 13, 14. He did not, well, I'll zoom in on it more closely. He used only mixed wood or hardwood, fine hardwood, but it's a very mosaic-y pattern. It's not like the Western Road area. You've got this sort of matrix of poor soil with pockets of good soil among it, and that also shows that the two are related to each other. That the hardwood occurs on the drier or the green, the well-drained soils, and the mixed wood on the less well-drained, and also spruce and softwood. So that is my research. I have only presented a selection of the data. I've skimmed a lot. I could go on, but I realize it's now well on in time, and I've come to the end of my slides anyway. So that was a whirlwind tour of Alexander Anderson's survey books. So thank you.
In here that might need to leave, so if you are in that situation or you need to step out, I'm going to encourage you to step out now. If you want to stay, and Doug's willing to answer a few questions, so if you need to leave, please make your exit, and if you have questions, I'm sure Doug will be happy to answer them. Right up front, right away, no waiting.
Well, just a comment that does not represent the whole thing that I find very interesting. I'm always shocked when I see, for example, I know there's less agriculture now, the fields are becoming trees again, like white spruce.
Yeah.
But when I see it as forest areas, to me, an area full of white spruce is not forested. I wonder why is it named tree area instead of forest area? To me, it's not a forest, but...
Well, yeah, it's an early successional forest, a monocultural type of forest. But yes, if it was allowed to mature, it would develop further as other species come in, and it would become a more mature in the sense of further along the successional route, which would involve eventually upland hardwood forests should return. It's called the climactic climax. They may be determined by climate, but our climate, as you know, is changing, and so whether it would revert to the same climactic climax of beech and sugar maple, and beech is also heavily penalized by beech canker, which I didn't mention. You know, it's difficult now for beech to be re-established in forests. Yes, I take your point.
It's the right
yes.
term, I guess,
Yeah,
to say forest area, even though it's only white.
Well, yes, it is. It is forest. It has trees. It's early successional. You know, it's on the stage to become a more mature forest.
Okay.
Any other?
Last year, I think it was on CBC Radio, I heard that 40% of the trees on the island were destroyed by Fiona. I found that hard to believe. What is your understanding of that?
Well, it's not my speciality, Fiona and the trees. I don't. I expect it is referring to tree volume, possibly, but no, I can't answer that, Ken. I don't. I assume it may be tree volume. If anyone else wants to comment on that.
I can address that.
Yeah.
The actual number province-wide is less than 10%, it's about 9%. And if you look for the report, there's a post-Fiona Forest update that's available online that will detail those numbers for you.
Thank you, Kate.
What's the definition of upland? Like,
Yeah.
Do you take one step up a slope and you're all of a
Yeah,
sudden you're
no, it's confusing because you don't think of the up west as having upland. It's upland can be right beside the sea. It's a sort of term that I think it's a term that has come in through the vernacular. You know, the common term upland soils by British settlers or British geographers just means dry forests that can dry soils that are good farmland. So it's a term that is sort of misleading, but it's so well established in the sort of landscape descriptions that we don't attempt to change it. It's historical.
Yes.
Yeah, that, in listening to this tremendous body of work that the surveyors did, and I'm trying to imagine their living conditions and what they were like. They're out there for, I don't know, days, weeks, months. They had animals carrying their gear. Were they
Yeah.
trying to feed horses
At
or
all
mules? Or
Yeah, all times of the year. You saw some of the surveys in February. Winter, especially, he had to travel from Bedeck area to wherever he was working in the west. At any time of the year, he would board with people. He records in, you might have noticed, he records who's working for him each day. One of the O'Leary Road survey sheets there, he had 4 men working with him. 3 were Dumville men, he said. That would be the people working in the area,
picked
plus
up from
Mr.
the local
Gould.
area.
And Mr. Gould came from Seacow Head, so it travelled with him to work. He did not write those fine notes in the field. You know, he was carrying the surveying compass,
and
plus
his chain. With
the chain. He had a chainman. He had chainmen, 2 chainmen.
Or something.
Yeah. He would have been using pencil and paper, but each day I expect, or he would keep careful notes. He would transcribe very carefully. You have to, if you're surveyor. Are there any surveyors in the room, land surveyors? You have to. There's one at the back. He could be called upon to testify in court. He would have to produce a map, possibly using from some of his records. He'd be going back to resurvey, as you saw, in the same area. So he cross-referenced everything in his books very neatly. And so the conditions under which he surveyed, in fact, winter surveying would be easier in many respects, as long as it wasn't too cold, as long as it was snowing. And he records the weather, and sometimes the weather stops him from working. If it's snowing, you can't really see very far. But in winter, you've got hard snow, ice over rivers, no mosquitoes, and not wet.
Must have been wet.
Yeah, they must have been. He records. He never mentions, as far as I recall, mosquitoes, but he does mention any bear traps that he comes across, or animal activities of that sort. And also trouble with the human animals. Surveyors probably know, I'm sure it has never ceased to exist, some people would refuse in doing farm surveys to let them cross on their land. Or one Irish woman was following him in the track, pulling up his stakes. Because, and some people were squatting as well and didn't want the surveyor in.
To be found.
But he's always very neutral. He was, I didn't mention in his biography, or did I? He was a member of the Legislative Council as well for 20 years. That's where his honourable comes from. But he doesn't seem to have got heavily involved in politics. And he's always very factual in his keeping his notes as such. Josh.
Yeah, this is amazing. Thank you for that, all that work you've done yet again. I had questions with the life of the surveyor, which you've just answered, so thank you for that. I'll ask about errors. Have you found that he was ever inconsistent or conflicting with other surveyors? Or sometimes did he ever resurvey his own land? Did he ever resurvey his own surveys?
Partly, yes, he did. Sometimes going over the same line, in part. And I found that useful because I could then compare his 2 descriptions. And I was interested whether he had a bias towards recording certain species, you know, like beech or whitewood. He would seem to always, these were high, and was it because he was keeping an eye out for it? And I found that that there were many surveys, usually later, where he did not record beech, where in the earlier survey he had, which means he didn't always record it when he saw it. He simply would record upland hardwood, or fine hardwood, say, whereas earlier he might have recorded beech. In terms of other errors, I can, there is a problem always in surveying errors. And the one thing that I could rely on is that the brooks would not change their position, at least unless there's been modern engineering. And so I could always plot from the brooks. And sometimes I had to, you know, I came to the brook before he said it was. And of course you have erosion at the coast. So his coastline is no longer the coastline that would be on the GIS today. But the brook will place you, you know, you can work back from the brook, such as the Pierre-Jacques River. On one occasion, I don't know, he had to count the links in his chain every so often, and he recorded, oh, my chain is missing one link. So, you know, I don't know if he went back and recalculated that 8 inches, but where the errors accumulate for surveyors is going up and down slopes and creating the map from that. You know, a vertical distance doesn't equal a horizontal distance. And that occurs in the central hilllands. He did survey there, his lot 67 maps. There could be errors there, but it's less likely on flatland, I would think. But yes, errors, and I don't know, I'm not a surveyor. I took a surveying course when I did ecology at Aberdeen. We had a brief surveying course, but there are errors that you've got to account for. Yes.
Have you come upon a record of when European larch was introduced into Prince County?
European?
Larch.
No, I don't know. Some of the foresters here might know. I don't know. Kate, do you know?
I don't know right now.
Bill?
Bill might know.
Yeah, there was some planted in the dedication of the lot here, not too far from Lake. I think that would have been 60 roughly. There would be a record.
Yeah.
There would be a record.
Yeah.
So the French would have brought it over from Europe?
No, that would be 1960.
1960.
Yeah. No, the French Acadian colonists came from Nova Scotia, Acadie. The French colonists direct from France would not be bringing trees, I would have thought at all. No, it was later in the 19th century that ornamental trees, English oak and others, began to be introduced. Yes?
So when he makes his books, does he make copies of his books? And where are the books? And what is the information used for at the time? Because I'm assuming the government has these, they're paying him. Why do they want the information and how do they end up using it?
I think the books were his personal possession, the survey books, I believe. I'm only speculating. They passed on likely to, he married but had no children, but he appeared to have had an adopted son who also became a surveyor called John Clay. And Clay's records also survive. So I expect it's Clay who deposited or left his and Anderson's books in the archives, or in the, not in the archives, in the public records office, the surveyor's office. And by chance they were saved because they actually, public records were often thrown out, you know, census records definitely, in even the 20th century, old census records. But it's by chance, I think, that they, well, the other surveyors, we know the names of many of the other surveyors, but their survey books don't survive in the public record anyway.
Whitewood.
Yes, Whitewood.
That's in Australia. Now, if you look at his species list and then species lists of surveys that were done subsequently, is there no tree that pops out at you that's very common that wasn't mentioned?
There isn't anything of that sort to compare him with, you know, no other surveys. It must be a tree that still occurs on the island, he never records it as a tree, and
Also might be a shrub.
often recording it as bushes, and it seems to be in clusters, a great deal of, or a lot of whitewood. He often appends it to the end of the description. And I've talked with various people. It's a unique term. No one else, none of the other surveyors, maps, describers in the Maritimes, elsewhere use the word. And I don't know, perhaps, if from the Scottish tradition, you know, his father was Scottish, perhaps, but I've checked that as well. I'm inclined to think, well, that I don't think it's poplar, that was the first thing, but he describes one stand in which both poplar and whitewood occur, just one stand. Poplar is...
Poplar sprang to mind because the underside of the leaves is so
and
pale.
there are two other species of poplar, the large-tooth aspen and the balsam poplar, and they're related to, they're early successional trees, but they're more forest trees than poplar, less common. And I know Kate Macquarie thinks it maybe, was it, you think balsam poplar?
I lean toward balsam.
Yeah, and Bill, you think possibly large tooth? Or? So, we haven't got consensus in the room. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know his survey and your entire presentation is heavily reliant on common names, like whitewood. So following up on that question, is it possible, even remotely, that whitewood could be a coniferous species rather than a hardwood species?
I thought about that, but all the coniferous species are accounted for in their accepted names. Now, spruce, well, you could say, could it be white spruce? But spruce, red and white spruce and black don't differ enough that one would be called whitewood. It is a term used for spruce wood, by the way, in the trade, I think, possibly in, I'm not sure if it's North America or the UK, whitewood as opposed to any of the, but that's for the wood of certain trees. But no, I don't, I reject the conifers entirely. And the habitats where it occurs is along, as you saw, near river brooks and river valleys. It tends to, but it occurs in the old-growth forest. It's not, and in other habitats as well, including wet forest. But it's not a disturbed, unless it's local disturbance of gap effects, you know, of trees establishing. But it almost is as, I think it is got to be a populous, one of the popular species, because it sort of occurs in clusters, or he refers to a great deal of, you know, and that's the way it grows.
And then this, second part to my common name question. So you mentioned the tamaracks and the question that you had regarding shipbuilding and junipers.
Yeah.
So tamaracks, you know, from the genus Larix. Again, junipers, is that a common name for tamaracks on the island? Because
yes.
Where we come from, junipers are, you know, junipers.
I know.
Different trees.
Oh yeah.
So there's a huge discrepancy.
In the Lloyd's Register, that is the Lloyd's surveys of ships in North America. There was a surveyor in Charlottetown, and on the form and in the they almost could rhyme it off. It's hackmatack, juniper, tamarack, hackmatack, juniper, and larch. So in the form it says hackmatack, tamarack, juniper, and larch. You know, all the same tree, but with different names. Now, on the island, juniper was the common name among the English population. Among the Acadian population, it was violon. Same as the violin, isn't it, George? And it's an Acadian term for the species, whereas in Quebec it has a different name. But it became the most valuable wood in shipbuilding because Lloyd's began to uprate the wood in the 1850s and 60s. They began to, well, even before that, the 40s, they began to realize that it was better
than than spruce, for example, or some of the hardwood trees. And so if you built a ship of juniper or tamarack, it would get a higher rating from Lloyd's inspector and give you kudos on selling the vessel. Okay. Yeah.
I think we're going to wrap it up here. If you have questions that weren't answered, you're welcome to come up and talk to Doug individually. I just want to thank you all for coming out, and to thank Dr. Doug Sobey one more time for... And lastly, I just want to let you know that our next lecture is on October 21st. It's co-sponsored with the Vinland Society, and it's Dr. Helen Christensen who's giving a talk called Memories of Osland, a historical Icelandic village in northern British Columbia. So that should be fascinating. So that's October 21st. So thank you for coming. Get home safe. We'll see you again.
Can I just say,
One second.
I just want to say, if anyone has a genuine professional interest, I could give them copies.
I'm sure they will come. They'll talk to you.
Okay.